Without music, there would literally be no Quami Collab. And I can assure you that whenever we sit to hang out or talk about anything, there is like nothing we can do unless there is music playing. Now we are with the crew, the creators themselves, and I'm really excited to bring in Provhat into this conversation. Provhat, do you want to kick off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
So my name's Provhat. I started Daytimers, I think. Well, I sort of had the ideas to start Daytimers back in March, April time. If you've not heard of us before, we're a platform that's aimed at spotlighting and supporting South Asian creative artists across all different art forms, all abilities, all backgrounds. We're trying to be as inclusive as possible because ultimately we're not seeing. We're just pretty as a group. We're pretty tired of the lack of visibility and representation we see in the scenes that we're passionate about, which I'm sure you guys also agree with. So we're just trying to really break that mold and trying to get people's voices who are normally go unheard, trying to give them that platform and that spotlight to show their talents. And so I had the idea back in about March, April time. Spoke to someone I went to uni with, Sherwin, King Monday. So I'd say for me personally, I'm like primarily a producer for sure. Doing that a lot longer than I've been DJing. Like I only really bought my decks maybe 2-3 years ago. But I've been producing for about 5-6 years. Primarily that. I think I sort of I've always my parents made me learn a music instrument from quite a young age because they didn't obviously have that privilege to be able to be able to do that from when they were living in Bangladesh. I've always sort of had that seed was sort of planted at quite an early age of really, really enjoying music and liking and wanting to learn about it and everything about it and wanting to make it as well and play it with other people. I think growing up, I was always sort of involved in that kind of scene. And then up until university, I think is when I sort of was exposed to electronic music. And that was it still is like a full sort of learning experience about it's this total different animal to what I was used to growing up, performing music and listening to music in a certain way, and electronic music is its completely own different world. From everything from how you listen to it, to how you make it, to how you experience it, to how you share it. That whole sort of practice was so amazing to me and completely new, and I'd never come across anything like it before. So that's sort of really, I think, what took me to start really wanting to learn how to produce that kind of music and play it out and DJ and collect records and learn how to DJ in different ways. And so I think it's everything just sort of comes back to how much I've enjoyed learning about music, whether that's from theory to scenes to culture to history to whatever. It's all just enjoying sort of learning and finding out about people and what they like and what they don't like and why they don't like it. And it's just a great sort of, I think personally I always like meeting people and finding out their stories, and I think music is such an amazing way to sort of be a catalyst for that as well.
That's so cool. Akshay, it reminds me of, one of the first creative things we started doing back in uni was starting this pirate radio station, right? And nice. Because we were never making music, we're not musicians, but what we used to do, Provhat, was we used to play this really popular Punjabi tracks because we were studying in the uni in Punjab, and you know how big the Punjabi music is, and it's always very on the culture, pop culture. And we used to play these songs, and then we used to talk about it from a cultural sense and political sense. Remember, Akshay, about why these crops are doing well, why he's singing about the policies and the tractors.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yes, our very low range, only hostel, crappy radio. But one of the reasons, Aman, I also wanted to really get to know Provhat's crew and just because they are deeply connected to this, not only just the history of what Britain is or what Southeast Asia, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan are, but also the connection between them. And that really came together with your name, for your team to choose Daytimers. And it would be amazing if you could tell us a little bit more about the history of the word Daytimers.
Yeah. I mean, I still to this day I'm so happy with the name that we've chosen, and I'm like, because the name for a project is always such like a massive ordeal. It's like, what the hell do we call this? Obviously, like we know what we're passionate about, we know what the background is, we know what we want our identity to be, but what the hell do we call it? And like me and Sherwin went back and forth for like a month or two. We were like, I just don't know. And then I remembered this post that I saw on the Brown History Instagram. And it was a picture of Radical Sister, who is a DJ here in the UK, still around, and it was a picture of her DJing in a Salwar Kameez, and she had like the bindi, and she was DJing like a rave record.
Nice.
And I was like, what? I remember seeing it the first time, and I was like, I've never ever seen anything like this in my life. What is the background of this? So I remember like back then when I saw it, because that was like, I think I'd seen it a year before we even started thinking about what like doing the project Daytimers. And yeah, so I read into it, and it was these raves that were going on, like secret daytime raves that were going on in the 80s and 90s that were run by British Asians around Bradford, Birmingham area, and eventually expanded to the rest of the UK. But yeah, so obviously like sound system culture and club culture and underground music culture is not something that South Asians or British Asians were sort of given the privilege to experience because of, you know, cultural clashes and like parents not letting them go out at night, understandably. So yeah, they weren't sort of given those freedoms. So they just sort of decided to make their own scenes, which is incredible. And yeah, and so obviously because it couldn't be in the night, it had to be during the day because that's the only time they were allowed out of the house. Yeah, they ran it during school time, and so they'd bunk off school in an afternoon. Go to a community centre. They'd have their like raving clothes on underneath their school clothes, so they'd go to school in 2 sets of clothes, and then yeah, when it was time to go to the community centre, they'd all bunk off school. Say they had like a doctor's appointment or something. I don't know what the teachers thought or the schools thought, like, why does everyone have like a doctor's appointment on this day at this time? So everyone just got the same thing. Yeah, and they'd go take the buses down to community centres, and yeah, they'd have basically a full-on rave in a community centre or like yeah, whatever. And the best thing was that not only was it facilitating people to sort of enjoy that experience, but it also had its own full identity in the sense that they were merging sounds of the cultures that everyone came from. So the Asian sounds of, you know, Bhangra and the Dul and like all those sonics that were coming out from the homelands of the people that were attending these events, but also the British side of things. So like UK garage and jungle, these are all like very drum percussive based genres, and yeah, merging those two really made us like such a unique scene that I think that had never really been seen in terms of not just the British Asian scene, but just the UK like underground music scene or just music scene in general up until that point. And they were really like in the 80s and 90s really setting their foot down, sort of creating foundations of what we as a collective are sort of basing our output on and our sonics off. And yeah, people that are really sort of pushing boundaries for music fusion. And yeah, creating those huge scenes that eventually spread all around the UK and like eventually moved to actually being full on nighttime events that people were going to, and then created scenes like the Asian underground scene, which has produced like some of the most incredible musicians that this country's ever seen. People like Talvin Singh and Bali Sagoon, Bali Jagpal, RDB, like all these like super influential people. Like I think Talvin Singh was the first Asian person to win the Mercury Prize. Mm-hmm. And no Asian person had won it up to that point, and he was the one that really sort of set his foot down and was like sort of made a name for himself as well as the community in general. So yes, these are really incredibly influential people that came about from a scene that we're still taking influence from today, and we still love and listen to and are still playing out, and it sounds as relevant today as it did back in the 90s. And yeah, like the sort of roots and foundations of all these were things like daytime parties that were just created out of rebellion and just a love for music.
Yeah, it reminds me, Akshay, you know, when we used to hang out in Chandigarh in the Gedi route, and we had this whole concept of Gedi, right? And everybody's dream was to like, get these woofers in the car and play only one song entire day, which was Bali Sagu's song, because he was the one who introduced these heavy beats, right? Which is, you know, everybody on the street, all the chicks could hear, right? Just boom, 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 boom. And we used to play that song entire day. Remember, actually, those crazy days?
I think the UK influence has been like just so present in my life, especially and honestly a lot more than I understand. Like in Indian, even Bollywood is like very deeply influenced by the fusion music. And Provhat, maybe you can tell us now, like now in this contemporary space where, like, of course, like there's a lot more access, a lot more availability. Like what were you thinking of when you came on as to curate this music set for us? Like, what are the ideas which you're thinking of now?
Yeah. So you gave me the topic of art, right? Which obviously is a great, like really broad scope for me to sort of have a think about what I wanted to do. But I really wanted to sort of tie it down into what we were doing at the moment with the project as Daytimers, but also my personal identity and like what I sort of saw as art through my own culture and my own background. Because I think that's the thing. Another thing with having South Asian based projects is that they're not always as nuanced as they need to be. And yeah, it can also often lead to certain demographics within the South Asian community being left out. So a lot of the time in the UK, especially if you're talking about South Asian, it normally just includes people from India and Pakistan, and people from Bangladesh, people from Sri Lanka, Punjabi people who don't want to be seen as Indian, Mauritian people, like so many different communities just get left out of that conversation. So I wanted to make sure that it was not just a generic sort of, we weren't putting across just like a generic South Asian, I wasn't putting just across some generic South Asian work. So yeah, one of the things that I did was I took recordings from people walking in rice fields in Bangladesh, as well as people working in mills, and sort of overlaid that with, and that was sort of like the background foley of that was sort of like the bed of sort of effects that were going on throughout. And I wanted to sort of create the experience that you were walking through rice fields and like just like genuine, authentic sort of parts of Bangladesh. And whilst listening to, so what I did was I overlaid those tracks with, those effects with tracks from our compilation album. So it was kind of, the experience was supposed to be sort of like listening to this album whilst walking through the rice fields, and I sort of automated things like reverb, and so it was sort of the music was coming into the rice field and sort of out, and it was all sort of like trying to make it as cohesive as possible and trying to sort of give the idea that, you know, this cultural sense of art can exist all in like the same sort of sphere. And yeah, I also I cut that in with sort of interviews and clips from Bengali visual artists from an art exhibition, sort of talking about their piece and what the inspiration was behind it, both in Bengali and in English. And sort of like had that in between the tracks, so it was sort of like the track and then the person interviewing about the.
Aman, Provhat is being really modest, but I think that it's the best way to experience that density, and for us to say how impactful it was for us is that we thought that we have to invite the entire crew to talk about each one of the pieces, because each one is just so strong, and the narrative of walking, the narrative of this space is just so strong. It's beautiful. We really loved the piece.
And I'll ask you one last question probably. So, you know, essentially, Provhat, you know, we are essentially doing this for collaboration, for people to, you know, budding artists, people who want to get into any kind of art or creative space, you know, to access these talks, these conversations, and, you know, in any way we are here to help them. So we get a lot of emails and messages from, of course, South Asia, right? A lot of people write in from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. And if, you know, there's one young guy who's like 15, 16 sitting in Bangladesh or India who really wants to be like an MC or a DJ or a music composer. And, you know, when you're growing up in those parts of the world, it's not always easy, right? You're from middle class, so you're coming from a very struggling kind of backgrounds, trying to make your ends meet. And, you know, there's no formal way to get education, to get mentorship from people in that area. So if there's somebody listening to you right now, what would you like to tell him, this young artist?
Yeah, well, I'd say find people that you enjoy listening. First of all, just find from your own perspective, like find people that you enjoy listening to, find the music that you enjoy making and listening to in that sense, and really sort of fine tune your craft to make it as so that you're really like, just make sure you're in it to really enjoy it for the first thing. That's the main thing. And then the second thing would be just the internet is amazing. Like the reason why we've been able to do this compilation, why we've been able to collaborate as well. And why we've been able to find all these artists in the first place is because I've just been able to hit people up and be like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Even when we had like 20 followers on the account, I was still hitting up people and like, hey, this is the project that we're doing. I'd love to get you involved. So I'd say don't be scared to hit up people that you maybe think, well, you might not get a response. Yeah, and you might not get a response. But, if you send out 100 DMs, even if one gets back, that's potentially something that could turn into a big project. So I'd say don't be scared of contacting even us. Like, I'd say our DMs are always open as a project to work with and spotlight, and we're always looking for stuff to put on our stories and promote. We've just started like our monthly roundups, so that's another way for people to get involved and have their work shown. So yeah, literally just have a look around, see who's doing stuff that you're into, who's pushing messages that you connect with and resonate with you, and don't be scared to literally just DM people and contact them and be like, hey, I really like your stuff, and I'd love to do something with you. And you're going to get a lot of people who sort of think they're sort of above whatever, and those aren't ultimately potentially the ones that you don't get responses for are for the best, but the people that do take the time to reply and do take interest in what you're doing, those are the people that you're ultimately going to want to work with. And I think that's the main thing. I think just don't be scared to reach out and contact whoever you want to contact.
No, this is great, because we speak to so many people and everybody keeps saying the same thing, that guys, if you're not doing anything, if you're not taking any action, if you're not reaching out, there's 100% chance that you're going to fail because you're not doing anything. But at least if you try, you'll have 50% chance. And I think lots and lots of people, Provhat, are really shy. Like you're saying, they're scared. They don't know what to do, right? And all it takes, guys, is it's internet, right? You already spend hours on social media, right? Looking at pictures and sometimes wasting your time, right? Reach out, hit it up. You have Provhat here. You have the whole crew of Daytimers UK. It just takes one DM, guys.
They've been doing fantastic stuff. We're gonna link you up on their. I think we have a SoundCloud for Daytimers. Yes, we're gonna definitely put in that link. We will have the link for Provhat and for everybody else on the crew with each and every episode. And they're also like playing all the time now because of lockdown. They sometimes they release a lot of music online, so you have full access. Just like get a good pair of headphones and just work it. Well, thank you so much, Provhat, for coming and telling us about all of this incredible work.
আজকে বাংলা আর্ট এক্সিবিশনে আমি 3টা ছবি এক্সিবিট করার জন্য এসেছি। ছবি আমার অ্যাকচুয়ালি প্যাশন, তো আমার ছবিগুলো বেসিক্যালি মিক্স মিডিয়া নিয়ে আজকে এগুলো। প্রথমটি হচ্ছে আন্ডার ওয়াটার ওয়ার্ল্ড উইথ পার্ল অ্যান্ড মস। দ্বিতীয়টি হচ্ছে সিশোর, যেখানে আকাশ এবং দিগন্ত একই সাথে মিলে গেছে। এবং তৃতীয়টি হচ্ছে কালারফুল মোমেন্ট অফ বাটারফ্লাইজ উইথ দ্য রিলেশন অফ ফ্লাওয়ার্স। তো আপনার Sabreen. This is my painting for this exhibition. This time it is representing Bangladeshi folk culture, and I'm focusing on lalon.
is Shaba and this is my two paintings. For my first painting I used acrylic paintings. So I decided to make the style Bengali village and try to make people understand what this is.
সামান্থা। চিত্রশিল্পী হিসেবে পরিচয় দিতেই নিজেকে ভালোবাসি আমি। ছোটবেলা থেকেই ছবি আঁকা হয়, মূলত রিয়েলিস্টিক কাজগুলো করে থাকি। অ্যাবস্ট্রাক্ট, মডার্ন আর্ট কম্পোজিশনও আমার খুব ভালো লাগে।
আর্ট এক্সিবিশন 2017-এ এসে খুব ভালো লাগছে। এটাই আমার প্রথমবার আসা। অনেক ব্যস্ততার মাঝেও একটা ছবি শেষ করতে পেরেছি। স্টিল লাইফ হওয়ার কথা ছিল, কিছুটা করেছি। আমি এখানে অয়েল ব্যবহার করেছি মাধ্যম হিসেবে, মিডিয়া হিসেবে অয়েল পেন্টিং।